In 2019, January, mind you, a little cute mod for Dota released called Dota Auto Chess. Now, this game was fun, it was a good time, it was pretty unique for its, time period, and it exploded, to say the least. All right, in May of that same year, it garnered already 8 million players, immediately proving that this auto battler genre really had something going for it. Shortly after, even AAA devs started to step in to make their own thing. Riot with Teamfight Tactics, you had the actual Dota creators Valve making Dota Underlords, which a little less successful, but that's okay. And even Hearthstone putting out Hearthstone Battlegrounds, their own take on the auto battler genre. Autobattlers were exploding, all right? They were everywhere. Everyone wanted to get in on it. And there was a little game that came out later called Super Auto Pets, which some of you have probably played if you're clicking on this video. And it did a lot of interesting things. One, it kind of pushed the auto battler genre, just like all of these own games did in their own right. But this one had something very specific, something like asynchronous gameplay, which basically means that you can play and you're not stuck in a lobby with multiple players, but it's still multiplayer. You take your turns on your own time when you want to do it, and then you eventually load into a match after making these decisions for your team, which was extremely unique and had only been heard of by one other game at the time. If you don't know and you didn't read the title, I guess, before clicking on the video, I'm talking about The Bazaar. Now, through The Bazaar's development, it's had a ton of changes, and they went radio silent for a while, due to a few different reasons. I have my own conspiracy theories, but one thing that was talked about beforehand was the asynchronous gameplay, and it's been proven to work. Super Auto Pets, like I said, was a great success. It garnered a bunch of players and still has quite a few players, but has also lost a lot of that fame. And I want to talk about today why they lost that fame and why the Bazaar will hopefully manage not to do that. So to kick off this kind of discussion, the first thing I want to talk about is other auto battlers and why they all seem to kind of start to fall off, with a very small exception pool. One is it's the style of games. It's how it goes, right? Just in classic games fashion, something's going to explode, some genre, whether that be like a battle royale, a hero shooter, in this case auto battlers, and everyone's going to want to get in on it, right? Every developer is going to see this new style of game and they're going to want theirs to be the one that sticks. So you get a bunch of usually garbage mixed in with a few good titles, so things like that die. However, I think a big part of it that's not talked about a lot is the fact that most of these auto battlers don't provide you much content almost at all. A lot of these auto battlers tend to get stale extremely quickly, and the ones that don't do keep a bit of their player base. TFT is a good example of this, Riot's auto battler, and they do a pretty good job of fairly regular updates that swap sets in and out and do all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, you're playing the same game. Yeah, you're going to add a few fun twists and turns, but it just doesn't hit. And unfortunately for a game like that, sometimes it just doesn't garner the depth of something like Counter-Strike, which I know probably isn't a fair comparison because they're extremely different. But when you think about the strategic depth and the different things you can do in a game like Counter-Strike with a team of 5 people and something like that, you're kind of able to get away with not releasing as much content, because releasing a little bit, something like a new map, offers tons and tons of discovery and hours you can put in to do things. Whereas you release a new TFT set, it doesn't take more than a week or two, and more than likely the meta is going to be, if not solved, really close to being solved, which just kind of leads to stale gameplay after a while. Now, this is not just I'm going to sit here and crap on a bunch of other games. Let's talk about the Bazaar and why I think this game could save the auto battler genre from this really gross pool of garbage that's been releasing in it lately. Now, some of you may have clicked this video and been like, well, what is the Bazaar? What are we talking about? What are we going on about? Well, the Bazaar is a asynchronous game similar to Super Auto Pets that is inherently a hero battler. I believe that's kind of what they've dubbed their style of game, where instead of drafting and picking like units and stuff to go on your board, you are a singular character and you're inherently drafting like items to allow your character to use them. And they have timers and damage numbers, and I'm going to have some gameplay on screen so you can kind of see what I'm talking about, but that's the general idea of the Bazaar. So one of the first things I want to point out here, if this isn't apparently obvious, is the characters are so well designed, and that can be such a good thing to bring characters back. Using TFT as an example, and again, I use this because that's one of the more popular auto battlers. Battlegrounds has a lot of players, but it's a little weird and unique in its way of doing things. So when it comes to TFT, yes, they have lovable characters. It's very cool, but you don't get attached to them. They're just little pieces on a board. In this one, you are playing as the character, which for a lot of people really sinks them into it. I mean, that's why something like Overwatch, for as much nonsense as that game gets, still has a pretty thriving fan base. While people don't want to admit it, it still has a lot of love and a lot of players. Some of that has to do with their characters. I mean, just the connection that people can have to a play style, to the way a character acts, to what a character says, to the way a character dresses, to just their general, like, aura that they give off, Things like that go a long way. And in this game, you get to pick between a pirate that's, as they just released this like cinematic trailer thing talking about how, and I'm talking about Vanessa, this pirate Vanessa's goal is to get enough money in the bazaar to hopefully go and free her homeland, I believe was kind of the like inherent goal. That's so cool. There's Pygmalion, who's kind of like the, to my understanding, default bazaar character. And he's a merchant that's trying to, make his way into the bazaar, and he's just arrived, and he's, buying items, selling items, doing that whole thing. There's Dooley, who is the cutest little one-eyed robot you've ever seen. And when you play him, it's another completely different thing because you're trying to build yourself up. You're just this tiny little robot guy, and you want to inherently make yourself this big, powerful robot in some way. You can go like the big mech route. You can go the route of having a bunch of little robot friends help you out. Like, it's so cool, and all of these different builds and things are very storied, whereas, again, using TFT as an example, and again, I'm not trying to, absolutely destroy TFT here. I think it's a fantastic game, but to use as an example, when you're drafting these heroes, it's just kind of on this random, weird board in the middle of space somewhere. Like, there's not really a story going on, whereas every single time you play the Bazaar, you're almost playing through a story with the character, which is pretty unique. Another thing that helps mix it up and helps make it feel like a story and like you're going on a journey are the different encounters that you get to have. So whenever you're going through your run of the Bazaar, trying to get to that coveted 10-win run, as you're going through that, you're going to have different encounters. Sometimes these are going to be shopkeepers. Sometimes these are going to be different people you can fight for different rewards. Obviously, you're going to have to fight other players at certain points. So these are all very important things that will be very distinct to your run. It's one of those situations where almost no two runs is the same. Between all the different items, all the different vendors, all the different encounters, there's so many different things that create this kind of storyline you get to go on that it just makes it insane, right? And then not only with these different encounters are they crazy, but the item choices that you get, because whenever you're picking what encounter you want to go to, let's say what vendor you want to go to buy shops or buy items from these shops, they will have specific things. So this person will sell fire weapons, and this person will sell water weapons, and this person will sell earth weapons. It's not that simplified in the game, but just as an example, it's something like that. So you get to curate your run, right? So it's all about making decisions that are optimal for your build. So it's less about being optimized and kind of following that exact route that you can follow every time, and more about in the moment decision making and, hey, what is going to help benefit my build the most right now, not inherently what is that meta choice. Something else that can happen that I think is genuinely really cool is these characters have their own little item pools, right? That's important. So as Dooley, you will usually only see Dooley items. Occasionally, you'll kill a certain enemy and they'll provide you with a certain reward that you can use. But a really cool thing that can happen is every now and then, and obviously I don't have the stats of how often this happens, I assume not very, you can get items from other people. So you might have an encounter with Vanessa in some form or fashion, and you can get a Vanessa item as Dooley or as Pygmalion, which completely throws, meta out the window, right? Because you cannot meta preparing for an encounter that, let's say, happens once every 5 or 6 runs. You just have to be ready to see that, get your choice of Vanessa items, and go, okay, what is going to help me build the most nonsensical broken build, right? Like, that's so cool. Something like mixing these characters' items, something about that is just super neat. And I think it also plays into this whole like bizarre concept, right? Because you're in this big intergalactic like garage sale inherently, and you really get that feeling through these mixing of items. The second to last thing I want to talk about is Kripp, actually. For those of you that don't know or didn't follow Hearthstone at some point, the game The Bazaar is actually being made by Reynad, who, if you just kind of want the general overview, used to be a huge Hearthstone creator, did a ton of stuff, really was very big into the game. He was a very good player. He played at literally the highest level and was extremely smart. He had a lot of takes on the game that tended to be right or proven to be right later on. So, good player. Another one of those is Kripp, or Kripp. He, in particular, has had access to the Bazaar for a little bit now. And we didn't know this until recently, where he talked about how Reynad gave him permission to talk about his playtests and talk about the gameplay. And he is excited. Kripp has said a few different things, sometimes along the lines of he has not put this much time and had this much fun into a game off stream than he has with the Bazaar, which is such a good sign for someone that plays strategy games and card games, and right now some Diablo as well, for hours upon hours just streaming them. To have this much fun with a game off stream is so important. That's so big. And that already tells you that the game is not only fun, but is enjoyed by someone who enjoys a game with depth and strategy. Because that's something that I think some people are getting worried about with the Bazaar, is that it won't be super necessarily competitive and there won't be a whole lot of like brain power to it. But from someone like Kripp, who seems to really enjoy games that have that, he seems to be enjoying it. Finally, I want to talk about my own excitement before I close this video out. Because for those of you that don't know, this game has been kind of announced for a while. All right, the Bazaar has been in the makings for a hot minute. I backed the game back, I believe in 2018 is when the Indiegogo came out, which, if you don't know, is kind of similar to Kickstarter. It's just a thing where you can fund projects and things, and that was what Reynad first used to try to fund the Bazaar. And at first he was using physical blank playing cards, and he talks about this in one of his recent videos that I suggest you watch. That's like the history of the Bazaar. But inherently, he's making this like deck builder, and then I think Dota Auto Chess came out, and from what Reynad talks about in some of those videos, the deck builder just wasn't working. There were too many flaws with it, too many issues. While it was a fun game, it wasn't going to be good for the masses, which, no matter whether you're a hyper-competitive player or just a casual player, your game has to be good. Even if it's competitively deep and you enjoy it, if it doesn't have a big enough fan base, it's just going to fall off. And that's what Reynad talked about a lot, and I think it's something a lot of people didn't understand. So between release dates getting pushed back and beta dates getting pushed back and the game looking 20 million times different than it did when they were first creating it, I am nothing more than so hyped to play this game at the time of recording in 2 days. I'm recording this on the 28th, and the closed beta is supposed to start on the 30th. And I'm just so excited, because with all of these kind of stalls and moved release dates, it's not like going to be a Cyberpunk issue, hopefully, where the game releases in a abysmal state, and it takes literal years for the game to be where it should have been on release. And that's what Reynad talked about a lot as well, is he said probably about 1.5 to 2 years ago, something like that, when they went almost radio silent for a long time, that he is not giving another date until this game is basically publish ready, which, again, just gets me more than excited. But nonetheless, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'll stop ranting so y'all can hop off. And hey, hopefully by the time you're watching this, the Bazaar is out in closed beta. You can watch it, and, a little free promo, all right? If you are interested in playing the Bazaar, you can get a founders pack at playthebazaar.com. Not sponsored or anything, unless Reynad wanted to hook me up, let me know how it is. But no, nonetheless, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.